the Russian suspension agreement, we've heard a few variants on what people would like to do, how they would like to deal with that from end of this year, December 31st, it finishes, end of. Others are looking perhaps to renegotiate it and maybe phase that suspension agreement out over a period of time, indeterminate at the moment. They've also name-checked China in there. So the US government has just got in a heavyweight fight with the other two main players globally in this space. How do you think they're going to react?
Well, we've been relying on Russia to supply nuclear fuel into the United States for a long time, and our utilities have strong commercial relationships with the Russian companies who supply. That's not changing. You know, the Russian suspension agreement put a cap on how much fuel could come into the United States in any given year. It was 20%. That agreement expires at the end of this year, and it's the recommendation of the nuclear fuel working group that the agreement not be allowed to expire but be extended, and perhaps further limitations be put on how much fuel comes into the United States. I think we have a long ways to go before that's fully resolved. There's going to be a lot of parties interested in the outcome of it. But extending the Russian suspension agreement, even at the current levels, is a significant boost to the front end of the nuclear fuel cycle here in the United States, where we need to have greater access to market share. We'd like to have the opportunity to participate at the levels that the foreign nations do. Oddly, American suppliers don't supply 20% of the nuclear fuel into the United States, but under the Russian suspension agreement, the Russians are guaranteed 20%.
Okay, let's shy away from the macro story, because that's not what your shareholders, not what our listeners want to talk about. They want to talk about what you think this means for uranium miners, US uranium miners, yourself specifically. What are you reading into what you're seeing here, and maybe conversations that you're having outside of this, leading up into this announcement and in the next few weeks?
Well, look, this is a breath of fresh air for us. Really, if you look at the U.S. Uranium production industry, which I'm a part of, maybe people have dug a hole and stuck us in the coffin and buried us already. Yesterday, in my view, somebody lifted the lid of the coffin and realized we do have a pulse and we're still breathing, and that we can come out of this. There is a pathway for us to build production capacity back up. There's a pathway for us to enjoy reasonable market prices for our product here in the United States. And very importantly, for companies like Peninsula, look, we already have a contract book. We already have contracts that we intend to deliver into and are set for deliveries out to the year 2030. So let us supplement that contract book with additional contracts of modest and reasonable quantities, selling to the government for the government's identified needs. And suddenly we become a stronger producer, producing at greater rates and at lower unit costs, and the vitality of our company and the vitality of our industry as a whole are reinvigorated.
Okay, so but here's the question is, so what's changed? What are you going to do next? Who are you picking up the phone to off the back of this report? Are there discussions planned? Do you know how you start this journey along this on this path to where it is that you want to go, wherever you think that path is going? What happens next?
Well, eventually, we're going to presume that the Department of Energy is going to start building the uranium reserve. They're going to fund the purchases that they proposed. And today, Secretary Brilette, in a briefing, informed us that they're going to look for a broad and inclusive process to select the suppliers. I think that Secretary Burlett can count higher than two, and it's not just two companies that are going to be involved in supplying uranium for the government. It's really just based on that statement alone. They're going to have a broad and inclusive process. So the next step is really to see the implementation of this process begin. It's really nice to have light shed on what the process is going to look like for everybody now. It's going to become an implementation of the planning and the works that we've all been preparing for some time. We've had the foreshadowing, we've had the foresight of what this could look like. What we got today was, the full unveiling of what it is.
Okay, then I know you're fine with regards to cash. You've got your contracts in place. You've got your project. You're ready to go when you can get financed. But you must be nervous about the timing of all of this. It must, you want some certainty over this, don't you? So when I asked you what happens next, I'm trying to actually work out what's your sense of the timing on when it has any meaningful impact on your business, your ability to transact, ability to sell, your uranium to the U.S. government. Have you any idea?
Yeah, straight. To be straight with you, if we're going to be looking at the government purchases starting in the government's fiscal year of 2021, we're not transacting in 2020. The government may put in place, or the Department of Energy may put in some limited buying opportunities in 2020. And for those companies that do have inventory, they may be able to participate in that. Peninsula has been blessed to be able to sell our production into high priced contracts, above the spot market throughout time, and we're not carrying a inventory waiting to find the price that we need, because we have the contracts in place already. So if there is 2020 buying, it's not something that we'll be able to offer into, but our game plan is really to keep our finger on the pulse of where this is going, and prepare our project to resume production and have material available for sale in 2021 and beyond.
So you can't drive the process, you can't affect the process. You're in a waiting game. You're kind of out of control, aren't you?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we can have conversations. We can make sure that we're always, having a seat at the table, and we do that. We do that all the time. We do that behind the scenes. But look, that's our job. We're going to make sure we have a seat at the table when the opportunities are there, and that we're part of that conversation.
Okay, so your message to your shareholders and others is: this is a good report. It's good for uranium miners. It's good for the uranium U.S. nuclear cycle, and they should just be patient.
Yeah, well, no, it's more than just be patient. You should accept that this is a very good report, and it is a very good outcome for the industry. They should be excited about the outcome. It's more than just patience, but now we have light on the subject. Now we know what the government thinks needs to be done, and what what policies and pathways and strategies that our government is going to pursue in support of the nuclear fuel cycle, in support of the uranium miners and the conversion industry, and the other participants who, like Peninsula, are developing additional technologies and working to enhance the technology of uranium recovery in the United States, enhance the use of nuclear energy in the United States. It's just a fantastic message to hear the government all in on support for nuclear energy from cradle to grave.
Okay.
It's exciting.
You're excited. Let me ask you one last question. The market has moved a lot since we did our interview. We're up around $32.50 from sort of, late 20s, I think, maybe when we spoke. So it's moved, and it moved off the back of obviously closures at indeterminate period at Cigar Lake, Kazatomprom, Prom, effects all over the world through COVID-19, as I think I mentioned earlier. So the prices moved. The supply demand fundamentals moved that. People were getting nervous. Utilities were getting nervous. Do you think that this report, the lack of detail in this report, the lack of numbers, the lack of certainty over timing, is going to arrest that growth in the spot price, or do you think it's going to be business as usual tomorrow and next week?